Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the third and final part of the Q&As. So sit down, strap in, and let me take you along for the ride. Alright, first question. What do you think about Dr. McDougall recommending no animal products nowadays? But before, at least in the early thousands, he was okay with people having meat occasionally, 1 to 3 times a week. In terms of health, you know, isn't that interesting? This is kind of the point I make about how things like these fad diets and eating disorder-based diets like veganism, eventually people's crazy ideologies overtake their common sense and the scientific evidence. Now, Dr. McDougall cured how many people's diabetes? How many people's diabetes did he cure? And obesity did he cure? Thousands. He cured thousands of people's type 2 diabetes without making the absurd idea, and he did this while allowing people to eat animal products still, lean proteins, right? He allowed it and it worked. He caused massive amounts of health restoration by having people focus on one factor and one factor only, eating a starch-based diet, right? Starch-based diets. We know research is overwhelming that starch-based diets, no matter what your other sources are, fruit, dairy, meat, things like that, we know from all the research that that is actual prevention of diabetes. Like, people don't develop type 2 diabetes in cultures and nations where that's what they eat. It doesn't happen. It is the prevention and it is the cure. That is an absolute cure for type 2 diabetes. Being physically active, eating mostly starches, right? Because you're limiting fructose, you're limiting saturated fat and overall fat intake if you do that. You're eating our body's easy to process food, starches. It works wonders for promoting proper regulation of insulin and glucose. It works amazingly well when combined with physical activity. Overwhelmingly, no. That is the absolute cure for diabetes, and it's the way to stop it from ever happening in the first place. Now, this worked well, and he cured thousands of people's diabetes. So, because he got caught up in crazy-ass vegan eating order ideology, he then says, hey, the method that I use has been proven in millions of people, billions of people around the world, been proven with my own medical practice to be an absolute cure for all these health problems. I'm going to change it, and I'm going to add further restrictions because of my ideology. And that's the problem we run into. When people get caught up in silly nonsense like veganism, they will abandon what they know works to take things to another extreme. They will abandon the science. They will abandon the overwhelming amount of scientific evidence and even people they have personally helped, and throw in additional kooky-ass regulations because they get caught up in it. And I think veganism destroys your brain, quite frankly. It makes people crazy. That's my observation. As someone who tried veganism before, who's hung around with vegans, I think it actually makes you insane. There's some evidence that might lean in that direction, but that's what I believe. I think it actually makes you crazy. And I don't think that's an unreasonable conclusion. And there's a perfect example. A brilliant medical doctor who cured all these people, who then jumps into the vegan philosophy and changes what he knows already works to put further restrictions on people, even though it worked for thousands of people and he was a miracle cure. He can't stick with it because veganism makes you crazy. Textbook example. All right, next question. Hey Jason, on your intermediate program, if I do on upper days 3x5 chin-ups with 20 kilograms attached, let's say, and after 2 complete sessions I add 1 kilogram on the belt, would it be a good idea? And when fail, reset? Also, with adding 3x8 skullcrushers on upper days with the same principle, affect recovery that much. All right, brother, I just did a video the other day talking about the problems of programming isolation movements, and I've talked about accessory work. You are using these as accessories. You don't need to be taking them to failure. You don't even need to worry about their progression. All right? If you can do 3x5 chin-ups with a given weight without reaching failure, and it's reasonably challenging at the end of a workout as an accessory, let's say on your days where you're deadlifting and squatting, all right, don't increase it. It's there already adding extra workload. The program itself handles your increases. If you start failing and resetting on block periodization, it has a very hard progressive seesaw effect, and you start trying to progress on the accessory exercises, like making serious enough progression that you're reaching failure on the accessory exercises, you don't understand how to use accessory exercises. You should probably not do any at all. You don't understand how to use them or their place. You need to stick to just the 5 exercises in the program and not worry about it then, because you're going to end up screwing up your results. You're going to screw up your results. You're on a structured program. Accessory work is there to shore up weak links by adding extra fatigue. If you start treating accessory work like primary exercises where you think you need to be adding weight continually, it's going to be a problem. Your accessory work, I would keep it constant all the way through the 12 weeks. If you can do 3 sets of 5 on these chin-ups with 20 kilos added without reaching failure, run that exact setup for the full 12 weeks. Then if you test it if you want, see where you're at on your strength, and if you want to add 2.5 kilos or 5 kilos the next go around, try it in the next 12-week block. Don't try to increase this stuff in the middle of your blocks. Your accessory, you're an intermediate lifter at that point. I'm assuming you're squatting probably 400 pounds, close to 400 pounds. You're probably deadlifting 450 plus by the time you're on this program. If not, you need to be back running a simpler program. Don't try to progress hard on accessory work. It's there to add additional fatigue. So if you're on a 12-week program like that, leave the accessory work constant, increase it after 12 weeks and see how it works. And if it starts to become a fatigue problem, cut it back to what you did in the previous 12 weeks. Accessory work is accessory work, not primary exercises. Don't put that much focus in the progression of it. It will mess up your results. The work is in the primary basic exercises. The other stuff is there to cause additional muscle growth in problem areas. That's it. And if you're progressing on the big lifts and the progression is already programmed in, you don't need to progress on the secondary exercises. It's not necessary until you progress on everything all in one go at the end of the cycle. All right, next question. Hi, Jason. You said before there's always room to develop your core and abs as an athlete. Well, for someone competitively doing taekwondo, how many and what exercises would you suggest I do? Also, how do you train the core and abs in terms of sets, reps, and intensity? Is it true that it's just like every other muscle you train? Thanks. Yeah, it is really like every other muscle you train, other than your core gets a lot of work on your other exercises. What we are trying to do is just add an extra level of fatigue for their development. Now, you basically see how I train. I mean, I have training footage of my full workouts up. What do you see me do at the end of most of my workouts? 2 to 3 times a week at the end of a workout, I come in and I do standing crunches with a moderate weight that I can do standing crunches with for anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes, and I do 1 set and I'm done. Most of your core work will come from your standing exercises. All right, we need to accept that. If you're not doing enough standing exercises to build a big, powerful core, there's a problem in your routine already. You're caught up in some sort of silly bodybuilder fluff. You are not training like a real athlete. The core work that we do is there to be supplemental. It's to shore up the weak link. And maybe we don't get enough total tension time on our core because of all the other exercises. So that's why I come in and I basically do, again, fatiguing work to go ahead and exhaust the core. 1 good long set should do that. Anywhere between 20 and 120 reps. People would argue that maybe that's too light. I don't feel that it is, because enough heavy work and bracing is done with all the big heavy barbell movements. And I think any contact sport athlete could treat it the same way. All right, next question. Hey Jason, for some odd reason my overhead press is stronger relative to my bench. Or in other words, my bench sucks. I can strict press 60 kilos for sets of 5, but I can only bench 80 kilos for 5. What should I do? You should get stronger on your bench. Now, normally I would tell people don't worry about it. It's not, for an athlete, it's not a disadvantage to be strong on your overhead press. If anything, you're less likely to have shoulder injuries If you're doing it proper full range of motion, you're going to have a more balanced shoulder girdle from a standing press that's strong relative to your bench. If it's really a concern for you, though, you just need to get stronger on the bench. You need to work harder on the bench. Maybe you're not gaining enough body weight. That's usually the biggest problem I have in people, assuming their technique is good, assuming their rest is good, everything else is good. They're simply not eating enough and not gaining enough weight for their bench to go up. That exercise is very, very dependent upon body weight. Now, that being said, what is an appropriate ratio? Usually 2/3. 2/3. So, in other words, I would expect you to be benching about 10 kilos more than you're benching. That would be the normal ratio. So, if you're doing strict presses with 60 kilos, 90 kilograms should be your bench. But it's not that terrible. It's not that bad. When you really break it down and look at it, you're not that far off. I mean, 10 kilos isn't that bad, to be fair. What I would say is, look, if your overhead press keeps going up, you know your bench is going to go up. Yes, your ratio is off a little bit, but in terms of overall athleticism and particularly shoulder girdle health, you're on the direction of the imbalance that you would rather be on. And if your bench keeps stalling and it's stuck and it's not going up in your overhead presses, and you have assessed your bench technique and you know it's not your technique, you're tight, you're not flopping around on the bench, you're doing everything correctly, you have really full lungs at the bottom, you're doing everything right. If it's still lagging a bit, you probably need to increase your carbohydrate intake. You need to up your carbs and you need to up your calories, and there's your solution. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.